What is going on, guys? So I'm starting today's video up in my apartment because I've got a whole bunch of stuff up here. And by a whole bunch of stuff, I mean parts. But let's get to it. I've got new struts. These are KYB, very cheap struts, but apparently they function pretty well, besides the fact that they ride relatively rough. I've got tie rods. These are turbo tie rods, so they're a different style than the original ones. These are off a 930 turbo, but they bolt straight on. These are the boots for the tie rods. What else? I ordered ball joints. Those haven't come in yet, unfortunately. And then this, from a viewer, Joey Weber. Thank you so much, Joey. You are awesome. I already opened it because I was too excited. But, let's see. Check it out. He sent me a pair of brand new Weltmeister A-arm bushings for the 914. So they're polygraphite, I believe, bushings. And then I ordered some cheapo bushings because this is just for the rear, and then these are going to be for the front. Yeah, I've got everything but the ball joints, but I can start tearing it apart. Before I get it torn apart though, I want to go run some errands. I need to get some like cleaning supplies because I want to like clean up and paint my A-arms and everything before I put it back in. So I'm gonna go grab some tubs to clean stuff in, some parts cleaners, some purple power, and start taking stuff apart. So I got all sorts of stuff in order to make sure that the parts before I replace them are perfectly clean. Got some Fast 505, some pretty hardcore degreaser. This is the stuff you want. If you want grease to go away, a bucket for small parts, a tub for the bigger parts, and just some Scotch-Brite pads. And extension cord and clips so that I can actually hang the extension cord from the ceiling. But let's get this thing up in the air and start taking everything apart. How many times do you think I've had a shot of me jacking the car up in the video? Let me know in the comments below what your guess is. I just recorded a bunch of stuff, and by a bunch of stuff I just mean I took the wheel off. What I was saying, I'm gonna take the fender off so that you guys can have a better view since it's so easy to take off, because I am a nice person. So you're welcome. My dad doesn't believe me that it's this easy to take them off, and it's just as easy to put them back on. So there's your proof, Dad. I'm taking pretty much everything off, except for, I mean, I'll probably leave the brake caliper attached. But that means I have to take the brake rotor off, the dust shield, this strut is coming off, the end links, entire control arm, the tie rod end is coming off, everything. So I'm just gonna start digging it apart and unbolting stuff. I'm probably gonna start with the brakes, brake rotor, hub. There's a nut underneath it here that needs to come off so that the whole hub assembly and wheel bearings will come off, and then I can start undoing like the strut and the control arms, and it'll pretty much I'll drop the strut control arm all as one piece, and then the sway bar end link and the tie rod end will be separate. You know, what's funny is just taking this apart for the first time, and I've said this before, I think, but I feel like I've gotten real lucky with this car because it does have a little bit of rust in it, or it did, and it still has a little bit that needs repaired. But every time I come to take a bolt off, it just comes off like super easy. Like with my last project, it was a Bug 73, so same year as this, same steel, because this was built in the Carmen factory, and that thing was just rusty as hell. Every single bolt was broken off every time I tried to take them off, even when I'd let them soak and heat them up. And this car, they just all come off like it's nothing. Pretty pleasant. Here's something funny that the previous owner left behind for me. So he replaced the front brake lines with stainless steel braided. And then the clip that holds this brake line in place is in backwards, so it just slips out. I don't know how that hasn't fallen out yet, but that's hilarious. I've never done this before, but I think it's just like the Volkswagen Beetles. Yep, exactly the same. I've taken apart Hondas that had more seized up components than this thing. This thing is literally coming apart like a relatively fresh car. And what's funny is it's not like the parts look fresh, but they're coming apart fine. If we're really lucky, it'll just pop through the knuckle too. I'm gonna spray down some penetrating fluid, start taking the rest of this stuff apart, and we'll come back to it later. I'm not recording when it happens, but I was just moving the brake caliper and it just broke off. So I think, that's a little bright. I think what happened was since it wasn't clipped in, this end of this brake line just kept getting fatigued and it just couldn't take anymore. So glad that happened here and not while I was on the road though, but I need to find something to start catching all this fluid. I was struggling and fighting this tie rod in for a little while, even after it sat soaked in PB Blaster. So I busted out the propane, took some heat to it, and then gave it one good whack with the sledge and it popped right out. So always make sure to use your tools because it makes a big difference. Alright, as you can tell, I'm a huge mess. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting the control arm out because my torsion spring, which I'll show you how all this works once it's out, but the torsion spring is stuck in the end cap, which basically means I can't get it out unless I get that out, the end cap off the torsion spring. There's a piece that connects the driver and passenger control arms together called the stabilizer bar, maybe? Shit. Something like that. But basically I can pull it all as one big assembly, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna take the driver's side apart now so that I can just drop it as one big thing. Take it apart on the floor so that the body's not getting in the way. That's pretty much my issue right now, is the body's getting in the way. So I'm gonna pop it all off. I won't record that because it's the exact same thing, but I'll be back when it's off, I guess. Well, I guess that's one way of doing it, just drop it out. So I ended up pulling it out because, well, one, this is the torsion spring. It uses this instead of a coil spring, and I couldn't get it to come out of this cap, and I didn't really try, but the fact that it was stuck on there pretty bad, I figured, and this was hitting the body, I needed it to come all the way out so that I could get the control arm off. Since it was hitting the body, I just decided to take this whole bar out, which wasn't that much more difficult. I mean, I basically had to take out these 2 extra bolts. But good because I can clean this guy up and paint it and everything as well while it's in there. So all the suspension will look nice and pretty. It's pretty cool how you can just drop the whole front suspension like this. Because now if you look under here, all that is left is this is the sway bar, goes through the body. You got the tie rods, and then the brake lines obviously, but everything else is gone, including the mounts for the suspension pretty much, besides the upper one. So I'm gonna clear a space out because this is sort of a mess. Clear a space out for me to move this up and then start disassembling this, tearing it down, and then I can get it into these tubs and get it soaking in some degreaser. Okay, so I finally got everything apart. I am so dirty. I mean, I washed my hands. You can barely tell, but I mean, like, look at my legs. This is horrible. Yeah, so everything is apart. There's the center, whatever it's called, control arm strut, assembly upright thing. Oh, actually that's it. I guess that's one of them. There's the other control arm. It all came apart relatively easily once I applied a little heat and some PB Blaster. The only thing that is not assembled on these is I can't get these nuts off for the strut. So I'm gonna soak them overnight in degreaser, clean them up. That should actually help with this too. I've been hitting them with a bunch of PB Blaster and heat as well. And then I haven't even attempted to get the actual bushing housing things off. But you can tell how worn out the bushing is. Look how off-center that is. That should be perfectly centered in this circle. And it's not at all. So those are pretty bad. So I'm gonna pile all these into this bucket, fill it with degreaser mixed with water, and let it sit overnight. Hopefully that helps with this corrosion and stuff. I don't know if it will, but hopefully it will. It'll at least help clean these off. So when I clean them up, or when it comes time to clean them up, once I take them out of the bucket, hopefully they should clean up really easily and I can repaint them and everything. Essentially, the stuff that's gonna get modified on these is I'm probably gonna chop these in half and extend them about 1/4 of an inch. And then this piece, so you can see it wraps around the strut housing. I'm gonna cut this piece off. There's some welds on the back here. Let's see if you can see that. So there's some welds on the back here. I'll trim them up, and then this whole thing will slide up this assembly about 18 millimeters and get welded back on. And that will basically allow me to lower the car and keep all of the same suspension travel and geometry. I'll just have to make a bump steer kit, but you guys will see that when it happens. I'd say it's already working pretty well considering it's pretty much black in there, and I just finished filling it all up. Alright, I'm gonna end the video off here. It's getting real late. I need to go take a shower. Obviously, I'm filthy. I'm gonna let these soak overnight. I've got all the hardware, control arms, struts, wheel bearings, pretty much everything in the suspension that is getting put on, soaking in there so that when I take them out, hopefully tomorrow or in the next couple of days or so, it is nice and clean and ready for me to respray and then reinstall or modify. I have everything sitting up there like you saw at the beginning of the video, except for the ball joints, which should come tomorrow. Tomorrow's Monday, so hopefully those come in tomorrow. They came in on Friday, but the postman didn't want to drop them off because the roof was getting redone or something. I don't know, it's a pain in the ass, but whatever, no big deal at this point. So yeah, sorry this is sort of a boring video, pretty much just the teardown of the suspension setup, but soon we should be getting more into the modifying and reinstalling, and then we get to see how well this car drives with the suspension, at least in the front done, and then I can move on to the rear. But yeah, it should drive a lot better. The struts on these, actually, I forgot to say, were like completely collapsed. In terms of decompression, or what's the rebound, I guess is the correct term, they were still functional, but for compression, gone. They were just totally toasted. Well, they were collapsed, so they were in. So if you pulled them out and pushed them back in, so pretty much if you pulled them to ride height where they would be sitting just static and pushed them in, there's no resistance, they just went right in. So those new struts, even though they're the cheap struts, they will be way better than completely collapsed struts. So I'm excited to feel how it drives. Also, these tie rod ends are toast. I don't think I showed you any of this. You can't tell now because the steering rack is loose, but this part of the tie rod end, pretty much, there's a joint there, and then there's the joint, the actual ball joint here. With the turbo tie rod, it's not this kind of joint because this is just a rubber bushing with a bolt through it pretty much. On the turbo tie rod, it's more like a modern one where it's like a ball style joint in there, and then it comes out and it goes just like this. So that is getting replaced. These ones are super sloppy though, the rubber's all worn out, and I mean, that explains why the steering was so bad. So that will be lovely. In case you didn't know, these are gonna get replaced because these are I mean, this one actually will move up and down. With everything bolted in, I could move it up and down about 1/8 of an inch, so it was pretty worn out. Those will get replaced with a fabricated control arm, or in link with Heim joints on either side. So that's what I'm doing for that. Rather than buying parts, I'm just gonna fabricate something because it's so easy. So yeah, that's how it's gonna look. Look forward to the next video. I gotta still track down some Heim joints for this, as well as for the tie run-ins. Since I'm doing a custom bump steer kit, I'm gonna need Heim joints instead of tie run-ins for the outer tie run-ins. So I'm ending it out there. There's a lot of talking, sort of rambling at this point. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Go follow me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, it's all in the description. And make sure to subscribe and share this video if you enjoyed it. So I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day. Peace out.